The world believed Princess Diana's fortune would vanish into the royal vault after her death. They were wrong. When executors unsealed her will in 1997, they discovered something the palace never anticipated.
Princess Diana's last wishes were meant to be simple, but what was found after her death shocked many people around the world. Behind her image as a loved princess and kind helper of people, there was a private plan she carefully wrote to decide where her money and belongings would go. However, when her will was opened, one detail surprised everyone and changed what people thought they knew about her story. Instead of sharing her estate in a normal way, everything was linked to one unexpected person. Why did she make this choice, and what was she trying to protect? Join us in this video as we discuss the details. The one person Princess Diana left her estate. To that changed everything. Princess Diana's marriage to Prince Charles began in a way that looked almost too perfect to be real. To the outside world, it seemed like the kind of story people dream about. A young, beautiful, aristocratic woman was chosen to marry the future King of England. The world saw grand ceremonies, royal titles, glittering jewels, and what appeared to be a perfect royal future. Millions of people believed they were witnessing a modern fairy tale unfold right in front of them. But behind all the royal pageantry, the truth was far more painful, far more complicated, and far more heartbreaking than most people could imagine. Before Diana ever truly stepped into the role of royal bride, Prince Charles already had a deep emotional history with another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles. Long before Diana became Princess of Wales, Charles and Camilla had formed a close bond. Many believed Camilla understood Charles in ways few others did. Their connection was natural, familiar, and emotionally strong. But royal traditions and palace expectations reportedly made Camilla an unsuitable match in the eyes of the institution. She did not fit the carefully protected image required for a future queen. Because of this, Charles did not marry the woman many believed he truly loved. Then Diana entered the picture. Diana was young, beautiful, aristocratic, and perhaps most importantly to the palace, she appeared to fit the image required of a royal bride. She was seen as suitable, she was seen as safe, she was seen as someone who could fill the role. And that difference would later become one of the deepest wounds in her life. It was not simply about love, it was also about duty, image, and royal expectations. To the public, the engagement was massive news. Diana became an international fascination almost overnight. The wedding in 1981 was watched by hundreds of millions around the world. Crowds celebrated, cameras flashed, bells rang. It was called the wedding of the century. Yet even in those early days, signs of emotional distance were already visible. The marriage that seemed magical from the outside had cracks beneath the surface before it had even fully begun. As time passed, those cracks widened. Diana eventually came to realize that Camilla had never truly disappeared from Charles's life. What had once been a hidden emotional complication became one of the greatest sources of pain in Diana's marriage. She reportedly discovered that her husband's bond with Camilla had not ended in the way a wife might expect. Instead, Diana found herself trapped in a marriage where another woman's presence seemed impossible to erase. This reality caused enormous emotional suffering. Diana was not simply dealing with ordinary marriage struggles. She was battling betrayal under the constant gaze of the world's cameras. She was expected to smile, wave, attend royal events, and maintain appearances while privately carrying pain that was becoming harder and harder to hide. Over time, she began to understand that her marriage was not just about two people. It was deeply connected to a system that often prioritized tradition and image over emotional truth. Eventually, Diana did something that made her deeply powerful in the eyes of the public. She stopped pretending everything was fine. Rather than quietly accepting humiliation, Diana allowed the world to see that her marriage was broken. Her pain became public, and in doing so, she changed the monarchy forever. She became more than a princess. She became a symbol of honesty, in a system many believed thrived on silence. By 1996, the marriage officially ended in divorce. After the divorce, Diana's life seemed to enter a different phase. She appeared determined to build something more personal, more real, and more independent. She was no longer bound in the same way by palace expectations. She was seen traveling, forming new relationships, and reclaiming parts of herself that many believed had been buried under years of pressure. Then came the summer of 1997. It was a time filled with photographs, headlines, and endless media attention. Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed became one of the most watched stories on Earth. Every move seemed to generate fascination. Every vacation photo became global news. It appeared that even in freedom, Diana could never fully escape being watched. Then, on August 31, 1997, everything changed. Diana died in a car crash in Paris after the vehicle she was traveling in entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at high speed while reportedly being pursued by paparazzi. She was only 36 years old. The shock was immediate and overwhelming. Her death did not just affect Britain. It shook the entire world. Millions mourned her as though they had lost someone personally close to them. Flowers covered public spaces. Tears filled television screens. Her funeral became one of the most watched events in history. And yet, even after death, mystery still seemed to surround Diana. Among the many questions people have continued to ask is what exactly she intended through her estate. Some speculation has suggested that Diana may have structured her wealth and personal legacy in a very focused way, possibly intending it for one specific person. Was it one of her sons? Was it both? Or could it have been someone unexpected, even a total stranger whose importance was never publicly understood? The truth remains uncertain, and that uncertainty has only added another layer to Diana's already extraordinary story. Before the royal wedding, who was Diana, and what beginnings shaped the little girl behind the princess? Let's find out. The little girl born into privilege but raised inside emotional pain. Long before she became Princess Diana, long before royal titles, global fame, marriage, heartbreak, or tragedy, Diana was simply Diana Frances Spencer, a little girl born into one of Britain's most powerful aristocratic families. From the outside, her life may have seemed destined for privilege, comfort, and influence. She was born into wealth, title, and social position. But from the very beginning, her story carried emotional wounds that money and status could not erase. Diana was born on July 1, 1961, into the Spencer family, a bloodline deeply connected to British nobility. Her family had status, history, and enormous social importance. But despite all of that, her birth reportedly did not bring the joy many might expect. Her parents had strongly hoped for a boy, especially after the devastating loss of an earlier son. The desire for a male heir was powerful, and when Diana was born a girl, accounts suggest there was disappointment. One of the most frequently discussed details from her early life is that she remained unnamed for 7 days. While this may sound small, many have interpreted it as deeply symbolic. Rather than immediate celebration, there seemed to be uncertainty, grief, and emotional complexity surrounding her arrival. From the very beginning, Diana's life may have been shaped by expectations she could never control. Still, her childhood looked extraordinary from the outside. She grew up at Park House, located on the Sandringham estate, close to the British royal family itself. This meant Diana was surrounded by grand homes, aristocratic traditions, and direct proximity to royalty from an early age. She lived in a world most people could only imagine. She played in privileged spaces and moved within elite circles. On paper, it may have looked like an ideal upbringing, but appearances can be deeply misleading. Behind the wealth and status, Diana's home life was troubled. Her parents' marriage was deeply unstable, and eventually, it collapsed. This breakdown had a major effect on Diana during her most formative years. When her mother left, it created emotional pain that would stay with her. For any child, watching a parent leave can be devastating. But in Diana's case, the pain was intensified by a bitter custody battle that reportedly divided family loyalties in painful ways. Her grandmother's involvement against Diana's mother added another painful layer to the situation. Instead of family being a place of safety, it became a space of conflict, legal struggle, and emotional confusion. Diana was left navigating heartbreak in an environment where appearances still mattered greatly. Then came another major disruption. Her father remarried Reine, Countess of Dartmouth, and Diana's relationship with her stepmother became deeply hostile. Diana reportedly saw her as an unwelcome force in an already emotionally damaged household. The resentment was intense, and this tension revealed just how deeply Diana felt the changes happening around her. Though Diana was often described as shy, sensitive, and kind, there was also evidence of strong emotional fire within her. Her difficult childhood may have helped shape both her compassion and her vulnerability. Pain often leaves marks, but sometimes it also creates unusual empathy. Despite her privileged background, Diana's younger years were not defined only by titles and grand estates. They were marked by rejection, instability, longing, and emotional wounds that likely shaped the woman she later became. Before the palace, before the crown, before the cameras, Diana was a child trying to understand her place in a world that often seemed to decide her worth before she could decide it for herself. After all the betrayal and painful lessons Diana endured, did she secretly spend her final years creating one last plan to protect her sons after her death? Let's learn more. Diana's final will, the hidden changes, and the questions around her fortune. When Princess Diana died in Paris in August of 1997, the world was in shock. Millions of people were grieving. Flowers covered the palace gates. Television screens across the globe showed endless images of sorrow, heartbreak, and disbelief. Most people were focused on one terrible reality. Diana was gone. She was only 36 years old, and her death felt sudden, devastating, and deeply unfair. But while the public mourned the woman they loved, another process was quietly unfolding behind closed doors. Diana had not only left behind two grieving sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. She had also left behind money, property, jewelry, personal belongings, and legal instructions. At first, many assumed everything would be simple. Diana's fortune, people believed, would naturally pass to William and Harry in a clear and loving way. She had always seemed devoted to her boys, so the idea appeared obvious. Her wealth would protect them. Her belongings would comfort them. Her legacy would remain in their hands. But things were not that simple. Diana's will had originally been written in 1993, during the painful period when her marriage to Prince Charles was already collapsing. At that time, much of her independent money reportedly came from an inheritance left by her father. This was a major financial foundation for her. But then, after her divorce from Charles in 1996, Diana's circumstances changed dramatically. She reportedly received a far larger financial settlement, worth millions more than what had previously formed the core of her estate. Financial advisors are said to have encouraged her to update her will properly to reflect these huge changes. She never fully did. That decision would later raise many questions. For someone as globally famous as Diana, many expected every legal detail to be carefully organized, revised, and protected. Instead, some later described her estate planning as surprisingly basic. It was almost as though a woman who had spent years learning how dangerous institutions could be had somehow left behind legal documents that were not as fortified as people imagined. Because Diana was no longer a working royal, her estate did not remain sealed in complete royal privacy. Instead, it became a matter of public record. This created a painful irony. Diana had fought constantly for privacy while alive, yet after death, her financial details became open for public discussion. Her assets were examined, Her choices were questioned. Her final wishes became legal material. By the time of her death, her estate was reportedly worth over £21 million. Naturally, William and Harry were the main beneficiaries. This part made sense. They were her sons. They were the center of her emotional world. But then another layer of complexity emerged, one that would create controversy for years. Diana had reportedly written an additional letter shortly after signing her formal will. This letter was deeply personal. In it, she is said to have expressed wishes about her jewelry and personal possessions. She wanted her jewelry preserved for her sons, with the understanding that their future wives might one day wear or inherit those pieces. This alone carried emotional meaning, especially considering how symbolic Diana's jewelry would later become. But more controversial was her reported wish that many of her personal belongings should be shared among her 17 godchildren. This detail changed everything. These were not random people. These were individuals Diana reportedly cared about deeply. The request suggested she had thought carefully not just about wealth, but about memory. She may have wanted certain people to receive meaningful parts of her life, keepsakes tied to emotion rather than financial value. But here is where things became complicated. Because that letter was not legally structured the same way as her formal will, it reportedly did not carry binding legal force. This meant that the executors of her estate, her own mother and sister, held enormous power over how those wishes were interpreted. And this is where controversy grew. Reports and claims over the years have suggested that Diana's exact wishes regarding her godchildren may not have been honored in the deeply personal way she intended. Instead of receiving meaningful treasured items chosen with care, some accounts suggest they may have received more ordinary possessions, lacking the emotional significance Diana may have wanted attached to them. Whether these decisions were practical, legal, or personal remains debated, but the result was clear. Diana's final wishes became subject to interpretation by others. Then came another major shift. Diana reportedly intended for William and Harry to gain fuller access to their inheritance at age 25. But this timeline was legally altered. Instead, access was delayed until age 30. 5 years may not sound enormous in ordinary life, but in royal life, 5 years can shape everything. This delay meant prolonged financial control over the fortune Diana intended for her sons. For some, this was a simple maturity safeguard. For others, it raised troubling questions. Why change what Diana herself had chosen? Why delay independence if she had already made her wishes known? This question has become especially significant when discussing Harry. Some have speculated that Diana may have understood, even before her death, that one of her sons might one day need greater freedom from royal systems. Whether that is true remains uncertain. But what is certain is this: Diana's death did not end complexity around her life. Even in death, questions remained about control, money, power, and protection. Her fortune was not simply money. It became part of a larger conversation about agency, maternal foresight, and whether Diana's final acts were her way of trying to protect her children from the very structures that had once left her vulnerable. To really understand why Diana planned her estate so carefully, what in her early life and broken marriage taught her that control and protection mattered so much, let's delve deeper. Financial freedom that could mean survival. To truly understand why Diana's will, estate, and financial decisions still generate so much fascination, it is necessary to understand the painful lessons that shaped her long before her death. Diana did not enter royal life as a hardened strategist. She entered it as a young woman who believed, or at least hoped, that love might be real. But the reality she stepped into was far more painful. At just 19 years old, Diana became— this was not merely suspicion. It became one of the defining wounds of her marriage. Diana was living inside an institution that demanded grace, image, and silence, while privately confronting emotional betrayal. Charles's continued connection to Camilla reportedly created enormous pain, and Diana increasingly realized she was not simply fighting for a husband's love. She was fighting against an entire system of silence, duty, and carefully managed appearances. This changed her. As the marriage deteriorated, Diana reportedly became more aware of how vulnerable emotional dependence could be. She began documenting, observing, and thinking differently. Public humiliation, betrayal, and institutional pressure appear to have taught her that survival required more than hope. It required leverage. When Diana eventually confronted Camilla directly, it was more than emotional pain speaking. It was a woman facing the truth she could no longer ignore. And when divorce finally came in 1996, Diana secured a major financial settlement. This mattered enormously. For Diana, money was not simply luxury. It may also have represented freedom. Financial independence meant she would not need to beg the institution that had failed her. It meant options. It meant protection. This context is why so many people later viewed her estate planning through a deeper lens. Diana had lived through betrayal not only from a marriage, but from systems larger than herself. She had seen what power structures could do. She had learned that titles could be removed, public image could be manipulated, and emotional vulnerability could be exploited. So when she structured wealth for her sons, some believe she may have been thinking beyond inheritance. She may have been thinking about protection. William, as the future king, was always likely to remain deeply tied to royal structure. But Harry, the younger son, occupied a different position, less central, more flexible, perhaps more vulnerable in other ways. This has fueled years of speculation that Diana may have understood her younger son could one day need greater independence. No one can prove exactly what Diana foresaw, but her life taught her hard lessons about survival. And perhaps that is why her financial legacy still matters so much, because it was never just about money. It may have been about something much bigger, a mother who had learned through heartbreak and experience that sometimes true safety does not come from titles, palaces, or tradition. Sometimes true safety comes from having the means to walk away. What happens when a carefully written will meant to protect a legacy is later reshaped by taxes, symbolism, and unanswered questions about hidden financial structures? Stay tuned for more. The reduced estate, inheritance, and the mystery of the shadow trust. The estate went through a major financial reduction before everything was fully shared out to the people who were meant to receive it. A large part of the total value was lost because of taxes that were applied after death. Reports state that about 40% of the entire estate was taken through inheritance tax rules. This was not treated as unusual under the legal system, but it had a very strong effect on the final outcome. It reduced the total amount of money and assets that were finally left for the main beneficiaries. What was originally expected to be a large and secure inheritance was reduced in a very noticeable way once the tax process was completed. This meant that the final value received by the heirs was much smaller than the original total value of the estate. Even with this reduction, the estate still carried a strong emotional and symbolic meaning. Some of the most important items were personal belongings, especially jewelry, that had deep meaning connected to public memory and personal history. These items did not only represent wealth, they also represented identity, memory, and legacy. Over time, several of these pieces became part of public royal appearances. They were seen again in later years when Catherine, Princess of Wales, wore some of them during official events. One of the most recognized items is the sapphire engagement ring, which became a very important symbol within the royal family. This ring is widely known and often seen in public settings, making it one of the most visible links between past and present generations of the royal household. Other jewelry pieces also appeared in royal events and helped keep the memory of the former Princess of Wales present in the public eye. These items became more than personal belongings. They turned into lasting symbols that continued to be seen and recognized by the public long after her death. Alongside the financial and symbolic aspects of the estate, there has also been long-term discussion about a possible hidden or informal financial structure that some have called a shadow trust. This idea refers to an arrangement that is said to involve a portion of money being directed towards selected private causes or specific social and political interests. The details of this structure are not fully clear, and it is not confirmed in a fully official or fully transparent way. Much of what is known about it comes from interpretation, speculation, and later discussion rather than direct and fully verified public records. Because of this, its exact existence and structure remain uncertain. Some accounts suggest that if such a trust existed, It may have been used to support causes that align with certain beliefs or humanitarian goals. These may have included efforts connected to public awareness campaigns, social change movements, or charitable work that reflects strong personal values. However, there is no fully confirmed evidence that clearly explains how such a system would have worked in detail, or who would have controlled every part of it. The information available remains unclear and open to interpretation. There have also been claims that this alleged structure may have had an influence beyond the immediate handling of the estate itself. Some theories suggest it could have indirectly supported later public actions, interviews, and charity work connected to members of the royal family. These ideas extend into discussions about media appearances and public statements made many years after the estate was settled. However, these links are not confirmed facts and should be understood as speculation rather than proven connections. Overall, the estate was shaped by three major factors. The first was the large financial reduction caused by inheritance tax, which significantly lowered the final value passed on to the beneficiaries. The second was the continued importance of personal and symbolic items, especially jewelry, which remained visible in public life and helped preserve a sense of legacy through royal appearances. The third was the ongoing discussion about a possible shadow trust, which remains unclear and unverified but continues to attract attention because of its suggested influence. Together, these elements create a complex picture of how the estate was reduced, remembered, and discussed long after the original arrangements were made. How did Princess Diana's personal choices and quiet defiance begin to reshape the royal family in ways that would continue long after her death? Keep watching for more. Princess Diana, a life of change, compassion, and lasting legacy. Princess Diana is described as a member of the royal family who slowly changed many old traditions through her personal choices, public actions, and private decisions. Her life shows a story of independence, emotional honesty, and strong care for other people. Even after her death, her influence continued through the way she planned her estate and the values she left behind. From a young age, Diana did not follow the usual royal path. Before she became engaged, she worked in London as a nanny and also as a nursery school teacher. This was important because she became the first royal bride who had a paid job before marriage. At that time, royal women were usually expected to have no work experience. Her early working life showed that she was already different and independent before joining the royal family. Diana also made personal choices that went against royal traditions. One well-known example was her engagement ring. Instead of choosing a special custom-made royal design, she picked a sapphire ring from a catalog. This simple choice showed that she liked personal meaning more than strict royal rules. Another major change came during her wedding. During her marriage vows, she removed the word obey. This was a strong break from tradition because royal brides were expected to include it. Her decision changed how royal weddings were seen, and later royal brides also followed her example by removing the same word. As a mother, Diana also changed many royal habits. Instead of keeping her children completely inside royal rules and private care, she became very involved in their daily lives. She was one of the first royal mothers to bring her children into public life soon after they were born. This was different from older royal customs. She also wanted her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, to grow up with a more normal childhood. She spent time with them in everyday places like parks, amusement centers, and fast food restaurants. Her goal was to help them understand life outside the palace and not feel separated from ordinary people. Diana's parenting style was based on emotional closeness. She believed children should not only see royal life but also feel real life. She wanted her sons to grow with kindness, understanding, and awareness of other people's struggles. She also became known for speaking openly about her personal life. In a public interview, she talked about problems in her marriage and her emotional pain. This was unusual because royal family members normally do not speak publicly about private issues. Her honesty changed how people viewed the monarchy and opened the door for more open discussions in later years. Outside her personal life, Diana became very active in humanitarian work. One of the most important causes she supported was AIDS awareness. At a time when many people were afraid of the disease, she visited patients and even shook their hands without wearing gloves. This simple action helped reduce fear and changed how the public treated people with the illness. She also supported work related to landmine victims. She visited areas affected by landmines and brought global attention to the suffering caused by them. Her actions helped increase international awareness and supported later efforts to reduce or ban landmines in many countries. In her private planning, Diana carefully arranged her estate to protect her children's future. Most of her wealth was placed into trusts for Prince William and Prince Harry. This meant they would be financially secure, but they would only access the money at the right time in their lives. This structure was meant to protect them and guide how they would receive their inheritance. Overall, Diana is described as someone who changed royal traditions through simple but powerful choices. She brought more openness, emotion, and humanity into royal life. Her actions affected how people saw the royal family, and her influence continued even after her death through her children and the plans she left behind. What do you think about the legacy of Princess Diana? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for staying with us as we explored the life and legacy of Princess Diana. If this deep dive into her life kept you engaged, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to continue uncovering more stories. See you there.